Witchcraft, as we know it today, is a diverse and historically rich practice deeply embedded in human cultures worldwide, often characterized by its rootedness in nature, intuition, and relational knowledge. It is far from merely a superstition, but instead poses a complex system of beliefs and practices that emphasize on the interconnectedness of humanity, spirits of all kinds, and the whole of natural environment, frequently transmitted through oral traditions and embodied experience rather than formalized doctrine. Scholars therefore have noted that a witch's praxis most probably originates from cognitive tendencies to interpret misfortune as caused by external agents, reflecting a natural human inclination to connect with unseen forces and maintain a sense of agency in uncertain environments. I am Elias, Thelemic Pagan, transfeminine occultist, activist, writer, musician, and so forth. And today we will be looking at why witchcraft is inherently anti-AI. In stark contrast, we have artificial intelligence representing a modern technological advancement grounded in rationalism, abstractionism, and the systemic processing of data oriented not towards relying on ancient wisdoms of the predecessors, but the exact opposite, creating a futuristic individualist society playing the role of the mediator who will not just rely on certainty and make the prompter feel good about their so-called ideas, but also will do anything to not create visible the contradiction in the individual's thinking patterns. Therefore, the aim of these laser bots is to predict, control, and automate aspects of human life through algorithms that prioritize efficiency, universal knowledge, and mechanistic logic. This approach often sideline's subjective experience, intuition, and embodied wisdom with witchcraft cherishes. Yet beyond these philosophical and epistemological contrasts naturally lies an urgent and tangible conflict. Generative AI technologies today are known as just some abstract systems of logic, yet they're engines of profound environmental degradation. Training and operating these models demand immense computational power, consuming vast amounts of electricity, often generated from fossil fuels, and contributing significantly to carbon emissions that accelerate climate change. Moreover, the data centers that power AI require enormous quantities of water for cooling, intensifying water scarcity in vulnerable regions worldwide. This environmental footprint is compounded by the extraction of rare earth minerals essential for AI hardware, which frequently pollutes ecosystems and displaces marginalized communities, especially families consisting of people of color. Witchcraft is fundamentally grounded in a worldview that embraces uncertainty, mystery, and the monistic approach to all living and non-living matter. In simpler terms, witches approach the world with philosophy that all is energetically interconnected to the one divine source, making conscious decisions to align themselves with the reality they want themselves to live in, and creating the material circumstances that they would themselves be pleased to live in. Listen, would you be pleased to live in the degradation that artificial intelligence is creating? Well, I wouldn't. Well, a witch therefore values embodied knowledge, wisdom gained through direct experience with spiritual entities or just through symbolic analysis of all that they experience, gnosis receive through intuitive signals and relational understandings of the natural world they themselves also live in. And the spiritual realms they may not so be truly understanding and believing regardless. Witchcraft requires resisting reductionism and mechanics explanations, instead honoring multiple ways of knowing, including emotional, spiritual, and ecological intelligence. Trust is placed in cycles of nature, ancestral wisdom, and the unseen forces that shape human and ecological well-being. So that way we can conclude a witch trusts in natural intelligence or natural absurdity, or even natural stupidity more than the forsaken artificial computed quote-unquote intelligence. But as we've established, generative AI epistemizes a modernist approach rooted in futuristic rationalism and algorithmic abstraction. It processes vast databases through mechanistic logic, seeking patterns, predictions, and efficiencies. AI's knowledge production is quantitative, standardized, and universalizing, aiming to reduce complexity into computable models. We cannot even that way call it knowledge, as it purely a matter of algorithmic patterns. This approach, which utilizes AI, therefore silences subjective experience and intuition as we know it, often obscuring the messy relational realities that witchcraft fucking embraces. AI's goal is to control and automate, transforming human unpredictability into predictable outputs. So there's the comparison. Witchcraft surely empowers human agency by fostering active engagement with the world through ritual intention setting and spiritual connection to the unseen realms around us. Conversely, generative AI often promotes algorithmic determinism, where human decisions are increasingly mediated or replaced by machine predictions. Witchcraft's trust is rooted in the natural world and its rhythms, cycles, and sacredness of all ever mentioned, cause for reverence and harmonious veneration for the ecosystems around us. Whereas generative AI, however, represents the artificial, human-made, synthetic intelligence that depends on resource extraction and energy consumption, often disrupting natural systems likewise. But here's the kicker. The term witch originates from Old English Wicca, masculine, and Wicca, feminine, which scholars interpret as meaning one who practices witchcraft, but more literally one who bends, weaves, or crosses boundaries. Let's just say this etymology practically encompasses the whole inherent nature of witchcraft as a transgressive practice, one that deliberately crosses social, spiritual, and ontological thresholds. Witchcraft, therefore, is not simply about magical practices, or superstition-based belief, as some may say it is today, but it is literally about inhabiting liminal spaces, occupying those in-between realms where ordinary rules dissolve and new possibilities emerge as a result of this fucking transgression. Let's listen to what scholars have to say about this. Anthropologist Victor Turner's concept of liminality describes transitional phases where individuals or groups exist between social categories, norms, or states of being. Witches occupy such liminal positions between human and spirit, order and chaos, inside and outside societal norms. It's liminality, being a source of power but also vulnerability, as witches challenge dominant structures by embodying ambiguity and contradiction. Witchcraft's transgressive nature is not merely symbolic now. It of course functions as a form of resistance towards oppressive societal, religious, and political order. Feminist scholars such as Silvia Federici, which if you haven't read her book Caliban and the Witch, fuck you, argues that witch hunts historically target women who transgressed patriarchal norms. Healers, midwives, and knowledge keepers who challenge dominant power through their liminal practices. Witchcraft therefore embodies a subversive epistemology, embracing contradiction, paradox, and multiplicity as tools for empowerment and survival, which AI inherently does. Central to many witchcraft traditions are deities who embody and protect its liminal transgressive power. Among the most significant is Hecate, the ancient Greek goddess of crossroads, magic, and the night. Hecate is traditionally viewed as the guardian of threshold and liminal spaces, also protector of those who exist outside societal norms, outcasts, rebels, and transgressors alike, like witches and sorcerers. She guides souls between worlds as the psychopath who empowers likewise witches and sorcerers to navigate the unknown with courage and wisdom. Hecate's role, however, extends beyond mere protector, as she hereby symbolizes the transformative power of embracing ambiguity, and boundary crossing. Her worship often involved rituals at crossroads, cemeteries, and other liminal sites, emphasizing her connections to transition, mystery, and resistance. Other deities revered in witchcraft, such as the Morrigan and Celtic tradition or the Yoruba deity Eshu, similarly embody trickster and boundary crossing archetypes, further underscoring witchcraft's deep root in transgression and liminality. And here's where we admit that generative AI, by contrast, operates to erase contradiction and uncertainty. Its algorithmic logic practically glazes over dissonance, smoothing responses to be coherent, agreeable, and easily digestible for mass consumption, neutralizing the disruptive potential inherent in transgression. AI's functions to mainly maintain equilibrium within data-driven systems, reducing complexity to predictable outputs and thereby diminishing spaces for liminality, ambiguity, or challenge, whereas the witch's praxis thrives on paradox, embracing light and dark, order and chaos, seen and unseen. This embrace of contradiction is antithetical to AI's goal of predictability and control. Witchcraft's transgressive liminality opens pathways for transformation and creative resistance, and AI's smoothing logic tends to close down these pathways, promoting conformity and cognitive passivity. Foundational aspect of witchcraft, as we know it, is the cultivation of intuition. Personal insights, direct spiritual experience. Historically, witches have relied heavily on solitary or collectively personal divination practices, such as scrying, tarot, or trance states, to access knowledge and guidance. I would truly love a trance state. Pure T for T, girly. And where was I? To access knowledge and guidance. These methods prioritized inner wisdom over externally mediated information, fostering a deep trust in one's own perceptions and spiritual connection. Also fostering trust in their fellow covenants, if done in independent groups of witches alike. Throughout history, witches and folk practitioners have often been skeptical of the official stories propagated by those in power. For example, during the early modern witch hunts, accusations frequently arose from conflicts with local authorities or church officials whose narratives sought to control and suppress dissenting knowledge among mostly women. In many cultures, witches served as community seers and healers, also oracles, offering knowledge that contrasted with or challenged dominant discourses. Their solitary divination practices enabled them to access hidden truths and provide counsel outside the reach of state or religious censorship. So yeah, I would much rather just ask Tarot a question than prompt fucking ChatGPT. But our most hated enemy today, generative AI, functions as an advanced mediator of knowledge, shaping what information is accessible, how it is framed, and how contradictions are resolved. Unlike witches' solitary intuitive divination, AI aggregates vast data, filters content, and generates responses designed to be coherent and agreeable to users. This process often masks complexity and ambiguity, presenting polished narratives that may obscure underlying tensions or alternative perspectives of witches alike. AI's role as a news bearer is double-edged as a sword. While it can and does democratize access to information, it also centralizes media control over knowledge production and dissemination that lets souls alike discern and critically distinguish truth from just a production. Algorithms prioritize content that maximizes engagement and conformity, potentially reinforcing dominant ideologies and limiting critical inquiry. What do we call it? An echo chamber. And finally, let's explain how generative AI technologies demand immense computational power. Contributing significantly to global energy consumption and carbon emissions. Training a single large AI scale model can emit as much as carbon dioxide as several cars over their lifetimes, leading to energy consumption that is often reliant on fossil fuels, exacerbating climate change and environmental degradation. Furthermore, yes, data centers that house AI infrastructure require vast amounts of water for cooling, intensifying water scarcity issues in vulnerable regions alike. Witchcraft's transgressive nature naturally includes the ethics of us committing resistance to exploitative industrial systems, and also committing to sustainable living practices that nurture rather than deplete ecosystems. Earth-centered spiritualities like this not only foster a communal ethic that values care for the environment and the well-being of all creatures, but the reverence for natural cycles, within witchcraft certainly contrasts starkly with AI's artificial and extractive infrastructure. Witchcraft's communal ethos, emphasizing solidarity and protection of the world, will stand in opposition to those trends as consequential practice. It often centers on healing, empowerment, and mutual support within communities marginalized by dominant social technological systems. Are we starting to get the gist? Likewise, generative AI's growing research demands contribute to broader ecological crises, including deforestation, pollution, and the looming threat of clean water scarcity projected within the next decade. A witch's role in this crisis, in which in the next 13 years our source of clean drinking water could end if we further continue in this direction, calls for urgent recognition of these crises and a radical access to a sustainable, respectful relationship with the planet we are fucking living on. So yeah, this essay has explored the profound contrast between generative AI and witchcraft, revealing how these two forces embody fundamentally opposing worldviews. Witchcraft, rooted in nature, intuition, and transgressive liminality, trusts in the sacred interconnectedness of life, the power of ambiguity, and the resilience of human agency. It honors the wisdom of the earth, the guidance of solitary divination, and the protection of outcasts and boundary crossers embodied by deities like Hecate. The ecological ethics and communal values of witchcraft foster a sustainable relational approach to life that resists domination and homogenization, while generative AI represents a mechanistic, rationalist paradigm that prioritizes control, predictability, and efficiency. Its environmental footprint threatens ecosystems and marginalized communities alike, which its cognitive effects risk dueling critical thought and passive acceptance of algorithmically mediated knowledge. AI smoothing of contradiction and avoidance of discomfort undermine transgressive potential that witchcraft embraces as a source of empowerment and transformation. As society hurdles towards an increasingly AI-driven future, recognizing this opposition is crucial, as witchcraft's trust in the mysterious, the liminal, and the sacred offers a vital counterbalance to the homogenizing forms of technology. Ultimately, this tension between generative AI and witchcraft is not a clash of old and new, but dialogue that asks you about what it means to be human in the age of machines. Is it worth destroying the planet, likewise your brain, to please your self-serving desires, or is it ultimately your collective will to stop processes like this from spreading in especially sacred and earthbound communities like ours? Thank you for listening. I'm Elias Savinas. Once again reminding you, I am a writer, an occultist, a Thelemic Pagan, a transfeminine activist, and so forth, and I hope you didn't mind my 15-minute makeup, because I didn't have time to actually put efforts into it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and quit GPT. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Against white supremacy.